They said he was just a rich kid, a token addition, a publicity stunt. But when Kale Stranik stepped onto the zero-G field, he didn't just change the game. He rewrote galactic sports history. This wasn't about honor. This was about legacy. Out of breath, Kale huffed and puffed aboard the small sub-elevator that was now delivering him from the medical wing of the Central Spire to the G-Ball Stadium, which took up its own entire level. This elevator was a small private one, restricted to only members of the Central Spire's G-Ball team and other sports-related staff. As his eyes canvassed the transparent glass, because this elevator, like most of the higher-class private elevators, was external on the spire, with the internal elevators being larger and more well-supported, but lacking in terms of view. He took in the usual breathtaking vista of the Academy, 100 tall spires that poked through the pristine white clouds, belched by the atmospheric processors that kept the planet-wise ecumenopolis comfortable for most species. Golden lines etching and tracing both aesthetically and along predetermined routes, followed by the automated logistics network. That's one thing the Academy has in common with Solara. Drones. Tons of them. Drones for every task conceivable. Though his father was an old hat that still preferred to hire people to do even menial tasks. But for most of the rest of the world, drones did all the jobs that people would want more money to do than any company was willing to pay. Thanks to the wonders of technology, drones were cheap enough to be an economic replacement. That was sarcasm, by the way. In a twisted way, his father is one of the few people actually trying to help with the employment crisis Solara is facing. Seems the galaxy at large has long since found solutions. But Kyle has no idea if or when Solara will adopt them. In any case, what that means is aside from certain kinds of specialty jobs, drones do most everything. Delivery? Drones. Technical work? Drones. Though they have operators that handle complex problems. You'd think medicine would use drones, but turns out that biology is too messy and unique for that. You need good doctors with creative thinking skills to be able to do that kind of stuff. Except pills. You get your prescription from drones. Cleaning is drones. Most vehicles are automated, though Kyle's personal shuttle has a chauffeur. Kale remembers a lesson in history class. Turns out, when all vehicles are automated and pedestrian traffic is largely segregated, your global deaths by car accident drop to near zero. Same reason drones don't do well with surgery. Complex problems require actual intelligence. But once you remove the complex parts of traffic, pedestrians and idiot drivers, suddenly things get far simpler. Though autopilot shuts off when you're not doing anything regulated, like flying or driving anywhere that isn't a predetermined route. Apparently, stores even used to have people whose entire job was to make sure nothing got stolen. Yet another thing drones are good at: surveillance. Checkout is also automated. You just put your stuff on a conveyor belt, and it goes through a scanner, and then comes out on the other side. Drones really did basically replace an entire class of labor. Problems like this is most of what Kyle's economic studies focused on when he was in high school. Not because the teachers actually taught any of it, but because he knew it was a problem he'd face someday. If he was going to take over one of the biggest, richest companies humanity has ever seen, he was going to make damn well sure that wealth got spent for the betterment of humanity. And Kale realizes this little stint at the Academy might just be the best way to find out how. They have drones, too, but notably don't seem to suffer from 80% poverty rates. Oh, Kyle is sure problems still exist and are very well hidden, but you don't get economies as bad as Solara's and not see the effects, no matter how good your government is at covering it up. Things here on Virilan Prime really are better, in at least some ways, and if he can figure out how, Then maybe one day he can find a way to create economically viable jobs drones can't replace. Ding. And that's the signal for Kyle to stop letting the storm cloud darken his thoughts, no matter how silver its lining. Doors open. Short hallway. Same bronze, white, gold decor as the rest of the academy. Locker room on the left after a short walk. The entire time he could hear the echoes of the stadium, that dull hum of a distant crowd's idle noise vibrating through the building, vague impression of some kind of music. But here, in this simple hallway, it's decently quiet. Not even a buzzing drone to play an advertisement or a news feed. Kyle pushed open the doors, and the soft white glow of the locker room washed over him, and a voice called out, high pitch, at least for a gourd. Ah, so the prodigal son finally deigns to arrive. I wonder what important business he had. Krex drools venomously. He and a few others on the team are still bitter about the tryouts, and especially about how quickly Kyle ended up as one of the core members of the team. Ah, come on, Krex, don't be so icy. We all know how harsh Coach Varric Dorn is. Kyle wouldn't be here if he wasn't good at it. Yarn, another one of the more sympathetic team members that seems to actually have a respect for Kyle and his skills. Though to call him, or them, friends would still be a bit of a stretch. They don't exactly hang out after practice or anything. I'm sure he was fulfilling his obligations as one of honored human blood. Raiden, this time. Unreadable, as always. And that honored blood term again. Professor Font said something similar during the lab test. Is that the gourd equivalent of being from wealth? Or something else? Kiel made a mental note to do a bit of research when he got home after the game. He barely had time to respond before Coach Varric Dorn entered the room, immediately commanding attention with a short grunt. Hate attention, Luminaris. He grumbled. Luminaris was the literal name of the team, part of the pride point for it. The Central Spire is the most prestigious of Luminar's 100 Spire academies, and is often called the Luminar. By taking its name directly, they basically claim to be the best of the best. Second game of the season, but don't let that lower your guard. These are the Creon Blades we're dealing with. You know them. He continues. KL technically doesn't know them, but he does know of them. Historically, they're one of the most competitive of the rival teams, and most years are the ones that end up facing off against the Luminaris and the Craigie Shed, which is the frustratingly difficult to pronounce G-Ball equivalent to the Super Bowl. The season finals, in other words. Last year, apparently, they got beat bad by the Luminaris, who ended up taking their 16th consecutive win that year. Varric Dorn continues further. They'll be out for blood, of course, so pay attention. Treat this the same way you would treat the Craigie Shed, and we'll all make it to the cafe on time for dinner. The teams line up, in very much military fashion, and Kale follows suit. The most important part of being on a team is cohesion, and doing as the team does, culture be damned. Varric Dorn patrolled the line like a drill sergeant might. He begins to explain the team's strategy. Game plan will be simple. We may have a new tool in our arsenal, but that is no reason to reveal it to the enemy so early in the season. If possible, I want to conceal it until the Craigie Shed itself. But I will not accept defeat for that end. I'm sure they'll try something dirty to get an edge. If you can't handle it, I'll give you the signal, and we'll deploy the Comet. Kale still felt embarrassed by that name. The secret code word that Coach decided best described the strategy Kyle used when he first tried out. Play keep away by flying to the far end of the field until the ball's repulsor field is so strong no one can approach. Then aim and let go, and watch it fly all the way back to the other end. Though unlike in the tryouts, the plan is to have someone on the team on that end ready to catch it and score. Can't get the score if no one's holding the ball after all, and there's no such thing as a kickoff or a field goal in G-ball. But now was not the time to argue for a name change. A curt nod from the entire team, and they were off, filing out of the locker room and onto the field. And man, was it a field. The same place they did their practices in, but the difference between a full stadium and an empty one is night and day. In practice, we didn't really feel the size of it. It was easy for the stands and the seat and the high ceiling to just fade away into the background. But right now, you can't ignore 300,000 people, double the seating of the largest stadium ever built on Solara. But unlike back on Solara, they can give everyone visual tools to actually see the field regardless of distance. Not just cumbersome binoculars, actual holographic lenses that blew up the action and let you see it as if you were in the front row. Though people still paid extra for front row seats just because they got to see it raw, with no lens to filter through, and to hear the action, whatever little they could hear over the roar of the crowd and the din of the snack and ad drones buzzing by. Was it worth the price? Kyle thought none. But that's not how capitalism works, and it was just as rampant here on Aries 2 as it is on Solara. Some people really will pay for anything if they think it's worth it, regardless of whether or not it actually is. The view was different for the players on the field, too. Holographic billboards, musical fanfares, the lines drawn by the thrusters of the drones that raced through the crowns like little techno-lights resemblant of ancient cyberpunk movies. The field itself was markedly less busy than a football field would be. The teams are largely self-sufficient, so aside from the players, their coach, and a small handful of personnel, there really wasn't anyone down here except for the refs. And here comes the home team, boomed the projected voice of one of the announcers across the entire stadium. Well, not exactly. The Academy features hundreds of unique species, all with their own languages. In truth, everyone wears an earpiece that automatically translates all detected words into a selected language, and often does so fast enough that you can hardly even hear the original words. So what actually happens is the announcer's voice is just sent directly to everyone's earpieces and modified to make it sound like it's booming across the stadium. Theatrics. Always with the theatrics, this academy is. Krogi Shed, Gravity Ball champion, 16 years running. The Luminaries. And the crowd goes wild. The whole stadium actually booming now with a cacophony of shouts, gurgles, roars, and cheers, so distorted by the maelstrom of noises that no translator bead could ever effectively translate. So it really is just a stadium-wise roar that shakes Kyle to his literal bones. He would be so anxious right now if his father hadn't spent a good deal of Kyle's youth training stage fright out of him and teaching him how to handle crowds. Smile and wave, Kyle. Smile and wave. Which was precisely what none of the rest of the team was doing. They were just silently marching out onto the field with no real fanfare. The opposite of the Academy theatrics, ironically. Same as the other team, which now emerged from the opposite end, where the Luminaries wore the same colors as the Academy they were named after. The Frost Tails instead wore colors more befitting of their name. Blues, teals, and whites, and their challenger, here for a rematch after last year's Krogi Shed, fierce blood rivals of the Luminaries since the founding of the Academy G-Ball, the Frost Tails. More booming from the crowd, but markedly less enthusiastic. Seems the fan favorite's pretty clear. Makes sense. 16 years running is a long time spent being the best. There could be people watching right now that have literally never seen the Luminaris lose a year in their entire lives. They'd be pretty young, sure, but Kyle still thought that was a powerful metaphor that really sold just how big a deal that is. But that didn't make the Frost Tails any less menacing. They really went all in on the big, mean, gored aesthetic. Their suits, custom-tailored, as basically all the suits for Spire-funded teams were Central or otherwise, were heavier and clearly more armored than the Luminaries were. That alone tells Kale all he really needs to know about their strategies, although he did of course do research beforehand. Never a good reason to go into things blind if you don't have to. He would definitely not be coming out of this game entirely unscathed. While the announcer went on about the game's history, and even explaining some of the rules to the newer fans, the Luminaries, Kale included, huddled for the tactical meeting before the first play of the first inning. There was a gourd word for it, but it really doesn't roll off the tongue, and they are really analogous to football quarters, so that's what he goes with. Boingier speaks. He's still captain of the team after all. Listen well, warriors. As Coach Fakudon said, we will be employing tactics of deceit. Let them think we have not changed since the last Kragi shed, and withhold our most powerful weapon for only when it is needed. If we reign victorious with old tactics, all the better. Krex, you know the drill. Go far, at the outset. Kyle, you will have a side runner on the other end. They will underestimate you as we did, and likely give you little cover. Krex, they know you as our best side runner, and will do all they can to intercept. Look for an opening if you can, but I will not delay for it. As soon as Kale looks clear, I take the shot, unless you have a better opening. Everyone else, interference, standard patterns. Do not let them play. Once we have a decent lead, we focus on defensive possession and maintain it for the rest of the game. This was actually the first time Kyle had heard Raiden say so many words. In the practices, Kyle was always on the other side of the skirmish, so he never got to hear Raiden's huddles. Everywhere else, he was always relatively terse. When the man is on a mission, he is on a mission. Respect where it's due. Kyle took his place as a side runner, basically the G-ball equivalent of a running biscuit. Side runners do all they can to find an angle and receive a throw, and then get as far as they possibly can before tossing it to the next player. In G-ball, a play keeps going until the ball changes positions or one team scores. Tackling is just a very convenient way to get someone to let go of the ball, so someone else on your team can get it. And once they do, that's the end of play. Everyone resets position and goes again. But that's enough thinking. It's time to play. Each team lines up. Well, not really a line, and more of a two-dimensional plane, or a wall. It feels kinda weird to say planes up, so whatever. Each team gets into position, and immediately they start talking shit to each other. Like no-holds-barred, clear-blood feud type of stuff. Stuff Kale doesn't really care to repeat, even in his mind's eye. But a few of the less salty phrases do actually translate correctly and bear repeating in Kyle's thoughts. I see the Luminaries have gone soft, inviting weaklings into your ranks, Raiden. Perhaps they felt bad for it, or maybe the Academy forced them to take the thing because it's honored blood. If that's what honor is to the Academy, maybe we should have stayed in the Empire. At least there it is true strength that talks. Speaking of, how's your mother? Raiden. Raiden. That last one practically oozed with venom and vitriol. Kyle has no idea what Raiden's family life is like. But if they're going to use someone's mom as an insult, that is more than enough to earn Kyle's ire. He opens his mouth to retort, but is immediately headed off by a different player on the team. Krex, in fact. Better than yours, soft blood? Which brothel did yours work at again? I will kill you, bastard Scale. I'd like to see you try Fugenberg. Kyle silently chuckled to himself. What was he thinking? Raiden didn't need his help. He's got friends to do it for him already. Friends. Damn it. The last thing Kale wants to think about right now is how few of those he's made so far. The whistle sounds, and the play begins. immediately everything goes to chaos. Each player finds another, or two others, and starts engaging in what Kyle could only describe as close to actual fist-fighting as the law permits. Tackles, grabs, spins. At many points there's something of a soft punch or clothesline, but nothing so direct that it catches the eye of one of the refs. Kyle, for his part, was only very lightly guarded. They assigned one player to him, but that's not even close to enough. Even his own team struggled to stop Kyle with 3 players bearing down on him, and they were way faster than these frost-tail guys are. Definitely the bulky grab-and-hold-you-until-you-stop-moving type. In seconds, he was far and away from the core of the fighting, with the chasing frost-tail lagging way behind. And in some seconds, more, he had a clear shot from Raiden. He was already looking for it, and didn't even hesitate for a second. As soon as that gap opens, the ball is away, and the stadium watches as Kale catches what is probably one of the longest throws Raiden has ever made. Entirely uncontested. The catch was easy, rehearsed, and practiced every single day since Kyle joined the team, and was already a good catch from his time with high school football. The run to the goal zone was even easier. The one guy the Cryon Blades assigned to him was the closest on the team, and the gap was only getting bigger. It became immediately obvious to every single spectator and player in the game. It was a free goal. As the buzzer sounds and the repulsion field, which barely even had time to activate, flicks off, the stadium is silent for just a moment. Then all hell breaks loose as it erupts into an even louder cacophony than before. The human did it. He caught a record-breaking foe from Raiden and ran it all the way home. The Cryon Blades were caught off guard and had no response. Did you see the sheer speed of him? A different voice this time. A co-host, clearly. Some things are universal, chimes in. I did, Halcyon. I sure did. Kyle Stranix, son of that tech mogul from Solara who's been on the airs of nearly every world in recent weeks, has demonstrated here today a speed that is unprecedented in G-Ball history. The Cryon Blades only put 1 player on him, and it was not even close to enough. They're gonna have to start taking the Luminar's newest member a bit more seriously if they want to have a shot at winning this rematch. The crowd's buzz is still a roar even as a turnover happens, and it becomes the Cryon Blades' turn to run the ball back to the other end of the field. But defense is exactly what Raiden and the Luminaries have been famous for the last few years, and it takes all of 1 play for possession to turn over with a godly intercept from Krex, supported by Raiden's perfect positioning. In the next play, they assign 2 players to KL, but it's still not enough. Though they do get closer this time. Possession turns over, and then it turns again, and Kyle secures a 3rd goal with no less than 3 Frosttail blockers trying to pen him in. But he got on the Luminaris by evading an entire team for 2 minutes straight. It's gonna take a hell of a lot more to catch him in the less than 1 minute or so it takes to fly the entire length of the field. The next turnover doesn't go as well. Kyle is fast and strong, but he isn't nearly as heavy as the Gord players are, and in 0G, weight tends to matter a lot more. He isn't a good blocker, and never will be, so it's all he can do to run a bit of interference and threaten intercepts on the throws with his speed. The Cryon Blades finally get their act together and pull over a point after 6 long plays. But once the Luminaries have possession again, it takes all of 2 plays of Kyle, making the first half of the field before a tackle to get the ball in for another point, making the score by the end of the first quarter 4-1. As they line up for the first play of the second quarter, this time with Cryon Blades in possession, Kyle notes that all the seemingly excited shit talk from earlier has ceased. All that exists between the teams now his dead air so cold they could give you frostbite and glares sharper than daggers, many of which were now directed at Kyle. They're clearly upping their aggression, especially towards Kyle, who now has several players seemingly dedicated to just cutting off his routes, several of which are ones he invented during his practices, and heavily abused here to slip between the cracks. The Cryon blades didn't even know they had. As the play begins, he can tell they're just using this to find ways to stop him, since technically he isn't the thing they need to worry about while they have the ball, which of course immediately bites them in the ass as Buengir suffers less pressure for the attention Keel is getting, which enables him to make another crucial intercept and almost immediately cause turnover. But before the teams can line up for the next play, the Frosttail coach calls for a timeout, and both teams return to the sidelines. Immediately, the other players and the Luminaries are all over Keel. Frost's teeth, Keel. Where was that during practice? Oh, you missed that day, didn't you, Yarn? When I first saw it, I couldn't believe it myself either. Speak for all of us. Keel has always been as fast as a comet. Hey, maybe that's what we should call you, eh? Not just the, well, you know, it could be your sports name. He did come out of nowhere, just like the real thing, eh? About as fast as one, too. Although I hope he doesn't leave like one. And several of them laugh at the joke, as most of the team offers pats on the back, or, in more Gordic fashion, chest bumps and friendly shoves. Even Krex offers his begrudging respect, despite clinging to bitterness earlier. Raiden, you did. Fine, human. Just make sure you keep it that way. Raiden, for his part, didn't have many words to offer, just a curt nod of acknowledgement before he turned his gaze to the other team's huddle. They're planning something, just like Coach said. But what could it be? He mused, but Kyle wasn't listening. It was nice for once to be hailed and respected. Normally he turns away attention, but this took him back to his old team, his high school football days, to Jake and Daniel, Jack, and he shook his head. Now was not the time to be homesick. There's 2 more quarters before the game's over, 40 more minutes assuming no more timeouts or breaks. The Frosttails appear to be done with their huddle, so both teams start to line up again as Kale gets ready to unveil more tricks of physics to pull off. But something's wrong. Obviously so. Nearly half of the entire team is on his side of the field, and they're definitely not positioned to be handling other players. They're clearly targeting Kyle, but it's way too many. The rest of the Suns' players are almost entirely uncontested. Kyle might have been making those last 4 scores, but they still have Krex, Raiden, and the rest of the entire team. Anyone can get the ball over the line. If they do this, they're practically giving it away. Kale didn't have time to figure out what it was they were doing when the buzzer chimed and the play began. Within seconds, the entire enemy team was on him in every direction. There was nowhere to go, nowhere to run. Literally every angle was covered, and in moments Kyle was buried under a literal ton of gored scale and bone. The pain was something else, as they dogpiled him with the force of a semi-truck. Thankfully, the 0G means he didn't slam into the ground and shatter any bones, but he did feel a distinct and painful crack in one of his ribs, and he's definitely got bruises all over. They didn't need to punch and kick him. Just the sheer weight of all of them at once was enough for the damage to be done. Exactly as suspected, Raiden was free to make an uncontested throw to Krex, who got the ball to the goal in that very play. But the Frosthills didn't seem to care. They didn't get off the dog pile until a ref blowed the whistle, and teams of medics immediately took to the field, showering Kale in arrays of scanners and devices. The words were too overlapping for the translator to get a good read, but Kyle did catch several things as they carried him to a side room. No signs of shock. He was so young. First real game, too. We need to get him out of here and to a proper facility." But as they began loading him into a stretcher, Kael raised his arms. Whoa, it's not on there. I mean, yeah, it hurts pretty bad. But besides a single rib, I'm pretty sure nothing broke or tore." This stunned all the doctors to silence for several moments, before one of them spoke with a shaky voice. "How are you conscious right now? You should be suffering extreme internal hemorrhaging after an attack like that. I wouldn't be surprised if you died on the way to the hospital." Kael gave a quizzical look before sighing and realizing what was going on. "Not again. Again. Seriously. Look, just do another scan or whatever and see for yourself. I can feel it. I definitely got some bad bruises all over, but nothing that's going to put me out. I could walk just fine. Hell, I could still play like this. My ribs feel a bit bad, but if it was broken, I definitely couldn't move my arms like this without some serious business." The medics all exchanged some suspicious glances before relenting and pulling out seemingly more complicated devices. It took a couple of minutes to set them up. All the while, Kael could still hear the game going on. It appears they've already decided he's out for the count and are proceeding anyways. He has to sit here, frustrated and impatient, as the medics eventually confirm his words nearly 15 full minutes later. It's a miracle. Just as he says, the internal bleeds have already clotted and mostly stopped. One rib has a minor crack, but it is already beginning to seal. Further strain could aggravate it. But Kael has had enough. He smells something fishy about all this. Something could be going on out there. See, I told you, I'm fine. I can still play. I'm not a child. I don't need to be coddled like one. Kael catches himself before more built-up frustration leaks out. The medics are just here to do their job. They don't need to be on the receiving end of years of resentment for his controlling single parent. But that brief outburst was enough to get them to back off and relent. "Very well. Scans have confirmed that your life is not an immediate danger, and the damage does appear to be somehow light. If you truly insist, you may return to the field." "I do." They nod and clear the way as Kael makes his way back from his side room that they'd taken him to. As he steps onto the field, the crowd was deathly silent. He could see several camera drones all turned to him, a few getting perhaps too close to be professional. Even the announcers are stunned to silence as he engages the EVA suit and floats up to retake his position on his team's side of the lineup. He couldn't help but notice the scoreboard had shifted from 4-1 to 5-5. In that time, they managed to even the score just because Kael was gone. What the hell happened? The Luminaries were fine before he joined the team, and they won last year's game against these same players. What changed? This time it was Coach Fekerdin's turn to call timeout as Kael team huddles around him, but not with the praise this time, but rather concern. "Frost's Claw, Kael, are you all right? You may not be quite as soft as the other soft bloods, but that was 10 Frost tails piled on you. That would have killed anyone else and seriously threatened even my life." Ugar spoke with concern. "I may not like having competition for a side runner, but I wouldn't wish that upon you, Kael." Even Krex was concerned, and that in itself was concerning. But Kael wasn't here to dwell on human durability. He just wanted to get back to the game. "I'm more concerned about all of you. What the hell happened? 5-5. 4 consecutive goals. You did not need me before I joined, so what changed?" Bungir spoke up. "They countered us. It wasn't as readily apparent with you before. You know, you stirred a storm in their strategy, but it seems they haven't been as lax in their training as they were last year. They have gotten expressly good at dealing with my standard tactics, and it has been challenging to adapt to them on the fly. That play where they tried to take you out was sacrificial. They gave up a point to just try and remove the one thing between them and the Kragi Shed this year. Permanently. They tried to kill you, Kale. And now, here you are. Kale was bewildered. Is that even legal? Not just in terms of, like, the game, but, attempted murder, Giga illegal. What? But Bungier shook his head. Impossible to prove. To any outside observer, it looks like an overreaction to your hot streak gone wrong. None of them would crack under pressure. They're all tough on the outside, and tougher still on the inside. Their loyalty to their coach is borderline fanatical. Kale responded, "That's ridiculous. Please tell me they at least got heavily penalized somehow." Bungier breathed a heavy sigh through his nasal slits. "Technically, yes. The refs decided to uphold the free point we scored and let us keep possession of the following play. But they truly have countered my entire playbook. For every configuration, they have something tailored to beat it. The second inning just ended. We only have one more, and with your injuries, I don't think it is wise to..." Kyle just growled in frustration. I'm fine. You let me worry about what I can or can't do. I'm good to play. Whatever you need. Whatever." Bungier nodded. "Apologies. I did not mean to insult you, Your Honor. You are right. It is for the warrior to decide whether they are fit for battle." He leaned up from the huddle and looked to Coach Facardin with a knowing glance, and the coach just offered a single, slow nod. Coach has given the signal. It is time to unleash the comet. Kyle really didn't feel like dwelling on the name. He felt that the Frosthails deserved something of a comet strike right now. As the teams lined up for the first play of the third quarter, Kale got a close look at the bewildered faces of the enemy. This time, he reveled in the aliens' confusion. He returned each of their shocked faces with a defiant glare that held all of the hidden force and subtle threat of a cocked shotgun. Though they wouldn't understand the gesture, he cocked his arm to emphasize the point of what he was trying to do. Perhaps because they wouldn't understand until after the fact. Everyone took their planned positions. Nearly the entire team was set up in a defensive formation around Kyle, who started with the ball this time rather than Bungier, who took one of the side runner spots opposite of Krex. Its onlookers looked like a simple change to a safer position for the injured player, but the Luminaries knew exactly what this meant. Knew they were about to change G-Ball history. The play begins, and Kyle immediately flies backwards, building up as much distance as he can from the front line. The stadium falls silent. Even news drones stopped mid-flight to ponder this most curious strategy. The Luminaries do an excellent job locking down most of the Frosttails, tackling and coming oh so close to genuine combat as aggression meets aggression. But it doesn't take long for the ones tailing Krex or Bungier to realize that the ball isn't going to be thrown. They turn around and go for Kale directly instead. There just aren't enough players to lock down everyone, but the deed was already done, and that's still only 3 Frosttails who are free to pursue Kale. 3 is a very manageable number. The timer ticks. The ball's field inverts and starts repulsing, and Kale feels a twang of pain. The cracked rib really doesn't like it, but he ignores the pain, and he pushes through. He didn't make it this far just to wimp out now. He spirals around an obstacle, narrowly avoiding a tackle. The repulsion field strengthens and the ball nearly slips out of his grasp. But he catches it, readjusts, and holds tighter. More pain, and the bruises are worse than he thought. He slams into a repulsive obstacle dead on, but catches the impact with his feet and pushes off. A Frosttails going for the tackle misses, and gets sidelined by the same obstacle, spinning out and off the field. The rebound was jarring, and this time Kyle couldn't stifle the soft scream of pain as he felt that the crack in his rib escalate, and his grip continued to tighten in response to the strengthening field. 1 minute, 30 seconds. Field is at full force. Kyle has both arms wrapped around the ball, and the frost tails that were pursuing him can't get any closer. Just like at the tryout, nothing they do seems to carry enough force. They just can't close the gap. Even the announcers can't commentate, enthralled by the play. Only one question lingers on everyone's mind. What is he doing with the ball? But Kyle knows. His team knows. They've all stopped with the interference. Even the enemy frost tails are simply sitting down in confusion, wondering just how long they can hold the ball for. No one has ever seen someone hold the ball at full repulsion. It just hasn't happened. It couldn't. By design, it was never meant to be. Kyle spun, screaming now in legitimate agony, as he painfully uses one leg to effect rotation, while compensating his grip by literally cracking the extra rib, pressing the ball into his chest. He spins. His eyes desperately look for the critical detail. There. Raiden, completely open since his tails left. Clear shot. No one in position to intercept. Not in time, at least. Raiden even had the free rein to float to within a few meters of the goal. Perfect. Kale released. With a shout, he let go and watched the ball rocketed out of his grip, flinging him backwards as well, though not as fast, given he weighs markedly more than the ball, and flew on a direct line towards Raiden. It soared across the arena. Its bright, vibrant lights flickered as the repulsive field went inert and created streaks in the air like the tail of a comet. They practiced this, and Kyle's job is done. Raiden catches. He doesn't even need to move with it. The momentum from the catch is enough to push him into the goal and score. Several moments of silence follow. Then chaos erupts. The crowd's tears explode like a volcano as the announcers roar through it all. Even the calm announcer struggling to contain his excitement. What was that? What under the sun, Aureus, was that? Kale Stranix has just made gravity ball history. No one has ever done that. No one in the entire galaxy has ever held under the ball for 2 straight minutes. It couldn't be done. It can't be done. But he did it. He actually did it. Did you see the streak? It's like the tail of a comet. That's it, Yarny, and that's his name. The Comet. Kale Stranix, Hansen's Comet. Listen to the crowd. And they did. The stadium was in uproar. The Cryon Blades were bewildered, having never seen anything like that. Their coach called for timeout and was clearly seen arguing with the referees. But then, one of the same medics that tended to Kale approached and whispered something that immediately silenced him. Instead, he opted to glare daggers at Coach Feckerton, who returned it with the most smug look of superiority Kale has ever seen on a gourd. And that was saying something. The rest of the game proceeded well. The Cryon Blades were so badly shaken up by the play, and now didn't know where to assign their players. They had to deal with Kyle, but anything as overt as that first dog pile would certainly see them caught red-handed, since accidental overreaction no longer applies this late into the game. But when they assigned more than 1 or 2 to Kale, Raiden and Krex couldn't have enough to stop their plans. If they assigned players to both, their middle collapsed, and they could never keep possession for long. It was impossible. They lost 9-5 by the end. Then Kyle, at the edge of the field as the gravity returned to normal, immediately passed out call. Thanks for tuning in to another episode, and if you like the Luminar series, there is more of it right here. Is this thing? Are we still recording? The crowd may have called him the Comet, but Kyle knew the truth. This wasn't his peak. It was his beginning. Because now, the galaxy had witnessed more than a record-breaking throw. They'd seen a human endure, evolve, and rise, not by being better than others, but by refusing to be anything less than his best. And that was only quarter one.